This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Notorious 5, Bonus Episode 1. When we left off, Angela found out everything there was to know about how Stephanie managed to manipulate Michael into hacking into the Doubletree Hotel. Before Pops Andy left, Angela asked him to come back and see her after he took the children back to the estate. And when he returned, he was pissed. He said, "Did you know?" Angela said, "Did I know what?" Pops Andy said, "That while I was up here bringing your children to visit you, my wife was at your estate moving out." Angela said, "No, I asked her to bring the children to visit me, and she said you would bring them." Pops asked, "So she didn't ask you to distract me? You weren't a decoy?" Angela said, "Of course not. I wouldn't get involved in anything like that between the two of you. Now, she did tell me that she was planning to move out. She didn't tell me why, and she didn't tell me when." Pop said, "Well, did she tell you where she was moving to?" Angela said, "Yes, she did. But please, don't involve me. I'm sure if you call her and ask her, she'll tell you herself." Pop said, "Now don't you think I tried that? She refused to tell me. She also stopped sharing her location." Angela said, "Pops, what did you do?" Pop said, "Now that's a long story. And if you don't want to be involved, then you don't need to hear it." Angela said, "Well, alrighty then." Pop said, "Now why did you want me to come back up here?" Angela said, "First, let me say that I already planned to discuss this with you before you gave me that letter that Mom Brenda gave you." Pop said, "It was from Donovan, right?" Angela said, "Yes, it was. This has been weighing on my spirit, and I absolutely plan to discuss it with Q. I'm concerned that when I do, he's going to need some support, and I have a feeling that he's going to come to you." Then Angela told Pops Andy about all of the time that Veronica spent as a member of the Salvation Center of Dallas's women's group. She told him that Veronica was a very active member of the group. She participated in group meetings, group coaching challenges, and both group and individual assignments. She also did individual coaching with Angela. Then Angela explained that everything shared in group is confidential by law. She said, "Veronica shared a lot with the group and with me about her life, from her childhood to her teenage years to her young adulthood, her life before she met Donovan, while she was with Donovan, and since her and Donovan have gone their separate ways. None of which I ever told another person because I couldn't. Now, a lot of it I did encourage her to share with her father and Miss Bernie and Donovan. I also encouraged her to go to therapy. So when I found out that Veronica left with the children, I racked my brain and scoured my group notes to see if I could find or recall any information that Q and LJ could use to find those children. I did discover a few pieces of information, and then I discussed it with CT. As the pastor of the church and the person ultimately responsible for my work with the group, I needed his permission and his support if I was going to share anything that Veronica shared with me in confidence. But before I even told him what I gathered, he was clear. There was nothing about the situation that necessitated me breaking Veronica's confidence. Pops Andy said, "What?" Angela said, "You have to remember, I knew nothing about any dangers in the Dominican Republic. I had no way to know how crucial the details were that Veronica had shared with me." Pops Andy said, "Wait a minute. Veronica told you that she planned to kidnap my grandbabies and take them to the Dominican Republic. And Corey told you that that wasn't grounds to break her confidence?" Angela said, "No, of course not. Had she told me that, I absolutely could have revealed what she told me, because then she would have been confessing plans to commit a crime. I wouldn't have been able to tell Donovan, but I would have been able to tell law enforcement." Pops Andy said, "Well, what did she tell you? And does this confidentiality extend to post-mortem?" Angela said, "It does and it doesn't. Now that the children have been found safe, I can say that the things that she shared were indirect. She told me that she enjoyed celebrating milestones in the Dominican Republic and that that's where she planned to retire. She also told me that she owned property in the DR that she purchased under an assumed name during the time when she was caught up in that whole situation with Tracy and Travis. Travis Gray was Veronica's ex-boyfriend. He used the real estate agency that Veronica and her friend Tracy owned to launder money and commit a number of other crimes, including insurance and mortgage fraud. Deuce, Tracy's husband, turned Travis in when he realized that the Dallas Police Department, his employer, was getting too close. So to protect himself and his wife, he made it look like he discovered Travis's scheme. He cleared any suspicion about him and his wife, but he left the suspicion around Veronica up in the air. When Veronica found out that Travis was still seeing his baby mama, and she was also involved in the scheme, Veronica turned state's evidence and denied all involvement. But because of Deuce's conflict of interest, DPD dropped the charges. What Deuce didn't know was that Travis was wanted for an attempted murder out in Memphis, his hometown. So when the charges were dropped in Dallas, he was extradited back to Memphis. Somehow, Travis managed to get himself out of that. But Travis and his crew had no idea that Deuce was actually involved in their scheme because they had no information about his connection to Roderick Arrington back in North Carolina, his uncle, and the captain of the police department. You'd have to go back to season 4 to get the rest of that story. So when Pops Andy heard the tidbits that Veronica had shared with Angela, he realized that his grandchildren could have been found weeks before. And he said, so had you said something, Veronica might still be alive. My grandchildren would have been home sooner. And neither one of my sons would be in the DR right now. Angela said, Pops, I had no idea that the DR was dangerous to the families. And it's not like I didn't say anything. In the past, when I've had a conflict of interest, I've done everything that I could to convince the person who needed to share the information with someone else to do so, and to help prepare the person who needed to hear the information to receive it well. In this instance, I prompted Donovan to try and extract memories of things that Veronica shared with him about places that she'd been, the places that she likes to go, her plans for the future. I even told Q to ask Donovan if he ever heard Veronica use a fake name. So while I didn't drop hints, because that's not allowed, I asked the questions and I provided the advice that I would have if I didn't know Veronica or anything about her. And when Q told me that he believed Veronica took the children to the DR, I was relieved. I thought it was all over. Imagine my shock and how scared I was when he told me that the man who attacked Medea all those years ago was from the DR. When she told Regina and I about her past, she never said the man's name or the country that he was from. And when we had the dinner where you and my Uncle Manny and the Queen Mother told us all about the connections between your families, no one mentioned the Ramirez family or the Dominican Republic. After a long silence, Pops Andy said, that makes sense. If you tell Q that you had information that would have helped Donovan from the very beginning, he didn't even finish his sentence. He just closed his eyes, dropped his head to his chest, and shook his head. And Angela said, I plan to tell him. After the twins were born and home safe, the stress of this situation almost caused me to deliver them early. And I'm still not out of the woods, Pops. I'm doing everything that I can to remain calm, to trust God, and not to blame myself. I can't possibly get through this pregnancy and deal with Q's anger too. We agreed to respect what we couldn't understand as it pertains to one another's jobs, but I don't know if our marriage can survive this. Pops Andy said, as hard as it is for me to say this, you did the right thing. My heart says you should have told everything that Veronica told you. But my brain says that breaking her confidentiality would have put that entire group, that church, your ministry, everything in danger. And if nothing else, you were right not to tell Q before he went to the DR. He didn't need that on his back. And you were right to trust me with this. Because if you tell Bella, Lord have mercy, when you're ready to tell him, I'll be there with you. I got your back. Angela said, thank you so much, Pops. There's one other thing, though. That letter from Donovan. Pops Andy said, oh, Lord. What did it say? Angela said, when he saw that amulet and he put 2 and 2 together, he also played back the conversations that he and I had after Veronica took the kids. He correctly guessed that I had information that would have helped him find his children. He said that Mom Brenda has another letter for Q that she's supposed to give him if he doesn't come back alive. She also has letters for you and Medea. He told her not to give y'all those letters unless he and Q don't come back alive. The next morning, Anya and Ron were at their appointment with Maribel. They hadn't said 2 words to one another since the night before, when Ron told her he would leave her if she aborted the hypothetical baby. They had their first real argument as newlyweds, and it wasn't nothing nice. Can you imagine a nearly silent argument? Hands flying all over the place, exaggerated facial expression. Lord forgive me. In the end, Ron told Anya that he'd stay married to her for legal reasons, but he'd be done with her completely if she terminated the pregnancy. When Anya reminded him that she'd used bush medicine to end her first pregnancy when she was 11 years old, Ron reminded her that he didn't agree with that either. He understood how dangerous it would have been for her 11-year-old body to give birth, but absent that medical necessity, he had no respect for such decisions. Then Anya told him she didn't even consider the danger when she was 11 years old. Her sole focus was not having the baby and her position on that hadn't changed. So when Anya's name was called in the waiting room of Maribel's office, the nurse handed her a cup. She provided a urine sample. And then the nurse checked her vitals, gave her a paper gown, had her disrobe, and she and Ron waited for Maribel. Since Maribel only had one other patient, Angela, it didn't take long for her to come into the room. When she did, she was pulling the ultrasound machine. She greeted the couple, and seeing the looks on their faces, she realized she needed to remain all business and brief. She had Anya lay back and immediately plugged up the machine. Ron said, wait, if you're doing the ultrasound, does that mean she's pregnant? Maribel said, I don't know. I had the nurse run the test, but I had her hold the results. I figured we could all find out at the same time. We'll know in a minute. Then she put that cold ultrasound jelly on Anya's abdomen, put the probe on her belly. Anya didn't even look at the screen, but she did look at Ron. He was crying and locked in. He knew exactly what he was looking at. And seeing him crying, Anya started crying. Maribel signed, I'm going to have to do some measurements so that you'll have all the information you need to decide how best to move forward. Give me a moment.